There we go. 2022, we've made it. It's crazy. We've been through hell and back, and sometimes it feels like we're still stuck in the middle of craziness. Our world has been turned upside down since 2020. COVID, crazy elections with the United States, the Ukraine war. So many crazy things are happening in our world that we will never be the same. The World Economic Forum is saying we need the Great Reset. Well, I'm a Sustainable Development Goal advocate, and I speak a lot on the SDGs. These are a different way to look at the SDGs, but I want to tell you, they were adopted by 195 countries in 2015. When I look at the information here at this expo, I think I have to start from the beginning. I don't see anybody with an SDG pin. I don't see any SDG logos. I don't hear people talking about sustainable development here. Well, when we look at Austria, when we look at tourism, when we look at our world, there are a lot of crazy things happening, and our world is changing. How does that affect tourism and our world? So I would have loved to see this when I flew into Vienna to give you guys this presentation. But instead, this is what I saw. On the way to the descent, I saw lots of beautiful farms, lovely trees, but then right before I hit the airport, this is what I saw. After I landed and came out with the car to drive into town, this is what I saw. Heavy industry, ugly, spewing carbon emissions out right when I landed. Well, that's not what I want to see on a vacation. That's not what I want to see for the future. What kind of future is that sending a message for Austria? Just a couple days ago, The Guardian released an article. It says that there are numerous carbon bombs set to trigger climate catastrophes. Those carbon bombs come from places like this that are still living on models of fossil fuels that spew greenhouse gas emissions and create all sorts of things. So, as I was preparing for this talk, I went to the website for the Austrian tourism, Austria Info, and I typed in the word regenerative. I am so glad there were 95 results. There was 95 articles and results about regenerative or regeneration, which is something that I'm going to talk a lot about to you today. I also did another one on the word sustainable and also on sustainability. On that, I only had 9 results. On sustainability, only 11 results. So we're missing the boat on some of the discussions of what are the models that we're transitioning to in the future. So I'm going to give you up to speed on the Sustainable Development Goals, but through this entire talk, I really want you to ask yourself 3 questions and keep this in mind as I go throughout the entire discussion. What is your why? And if anyone knows who Simon Sinek is, you'll know what a why is. The second question is, what does a world that works for everyone look like to you? Not your company, not your school, not your parents, not your spouse. What does a world that works for everyone look like for you? And the last question is, before this decade is out, I will do what? You personally, I want you to ask those questions and think about them as I go through, because I'm going to give you the answer. We're right now in the Anthropocene, but our goal is to get into the Symbiocene, to make a world that has evolved and regenerated itself enough that we transition into a new epoch for humanity, that we get out of this human age of destruction, which we're calling the Symbiocene. And this is not something I made up. There are some books out there that really talk about symbiosis and talk about the Symbiocene and how we need to get out of this dystopian verbiage of Anthropocene and negative emissions and all the doom and gloom that's in our world, and start creating some visions of joy of where we're going, where we're transitioning to in the future. And so we have a nice, clear vision of what that future looks like and how to get there. This is the second catalog image of our Earth. So most climate speakers, most environmentalists, most activists, they always show this. They show it for a couple reasons. They show it because they want to show you that there's no borders, no nations, no divisions of humanity one from another. They want you to know that you're a crew member of this spaceship Earth and that there is no individual on this planet Earth. I show it to you for totally different reasons. I show it to you because I want you to feel and acknowledge that you're tied to this Earth. You weren't dropped off here on a spaceship Austria onto this planet. I wasn't dropped off on spaceship USA onto this planet. We all crawled out of the primordial soup of this earth. Yes, from our mothers, but from Mother Nature and from this earth is how we were born. It started out as microorganisms and bacteria, and then we slowly crawled out of this primordial soup to be here. We are an integral part of this planet, and that's also part of the solution. I want to go back one more because the second reason I show you this is so vital. What is this? What is this? How do we have this? This image is sheer innovation. We're in the innovation room, right? We're talking about innovation. Had we not gone to the moon, had we not gone to outer space, used the latest computing power, the latest technology, we wouldn't even have this image. This image is sheer advancement and innovation. It is showing us the heartbeat of our planet, the lifeblood, the pulse of our planet, up to date, up to second, of where we're going, what's going on our planet, and how to fix things. We have thousands of satellites looking back at our Earth to calculate soil moisture, precipitation, the hydrosphere, the atmosphere, the cryosphere, that gives us data that we can use to make our planet better, but also to warn us against what's coming. This is the heartbeat, the pulse of our planet. And it is sheer innovation. And I don't want you to forget that point of innovation and this connection to our planet. This is our Buckminster Fuller. He wrote a couple books, but I always say, man, I wish I would have got an instruction manual how to be a human being or how to interact on this planet. We didn't get that. But our Buckminster Fuller wrote a book, The Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth. And he was one of the first to coin the term Spaceship Earth, that we're all on the same planet. And he has a why. And I want to share his why for you, for all humanity. And he wrote it in 1968 and said it many times, and he created the world game. His why was to make the world work for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time through spontaneous cooperation without the ecological offense or disadvantage of anyone. Now, you kind of wonder why this slide looks this way, because that's on the inside cover of his book. Right in the beginning, on the inside cover of his book, he wrote down his why and his wish and desire. 1968. Simon Sinek wasn't around there. For those of you who know business and this why, but he set a vision for all humanity to move forward. This is a good friend of mine, and I want to tell you a story about him. This is Dr. Bertrand Piccard. He is the first man to fly around the world in a solar impulse glider. First man to fly around the world without fossil fuels, and a glider that is 1,000 times more efficient than the highest performing competition glider in our world, with solar panels on the wing, without fossil fuels, without fuels, just on solar energy. And he's the owner of this company called 1,000 Solutions. These are 1,000 solutions to save human suffering, to save our planet, to save the environmental destruction, and offer planetary services. But there's a caveat to that. All of these solutions have planet, people, and profits in mind. That means they have an economic model ingrained in these solutions so that they can also function in our capitalistic society today, so that they can generate money to self-sustain themselves to help offer planetary services. And when I saw this is an image where we're at COP24 in Katowice, Poland. This is the climate conference for the United Nations. And after we see each other all over the world, different events, after he flew around the world, I went up to him and I said, Bertrand, how was it? Congratulations, this was a fabulous moment. You just flew around the world in the first solar airplane. And he said, Mark, have you ever ridden in a car that is all electric? And I said, yeah, matter of fact, just a week ago in Italy, I rode in one of these new smarts. And it was really weird because I kept pressing the start button, waiting for the engine sound, and nothing happened. And I was like, this battery's dead. There's nothing going on. But the car was already on. I just needed to step on the pedal, and then it would have taken off. But it was totally silent. And then when I finally figured out how to get it to go, which was all my fault, it was dead silent. I was like, there's no noise. It's pretty quiet. This is weird. He said, that's nothing. Imagine that times 1,000. I'm up in this solar impulse airplane on solar power, and it acts like a glider. So we use the propellers and we climb just as high as we can. We scratch the atmosphere so that I need a mask with oxygen. And then I turn off the propellers and let the solar panels charge as I do a very slow, gradual dive down. And then I restart the propellers and go back up. He says, I just shut off the propellers and I was doing this gradual glide. I'd done all my checks, about 15 minutes. I did all my checks, checked all my instrumentations, took all the measurements that I needed, and it was dead silent. He said, I've never been up in the atmosphere before and have it been dead silent. You can hear the rumble or rum of the motors and the engines, and there's air flowing through the cockpit, and it's just loud. He says, it was silent, and it was beautiful. So I said, I looked off to the left and I looked at the solar panels on the wings on the left. Then I looked back in the cockpit. I'm wearing kind of a spacesuit and I had all this technology there. Then I looked off to the wing on the right and the solar panels. And he said, I'm a spaceman. I'm from the future. I'm from outer space. I'm from the future. And he was in this euphoric moment. And he was like, I'm a rocket man. I'm from outer space. I'm from the future. And then he was in this euphoria and he looked around some more. He looked at the solar panels. He looked at the panel on his control panel, and he's sitting on a toilet and he's got all this space gear on and all these buttons and gadgets. And it hit him. He said, no, solar panels have existed for decades. Gliders have been around since the Wright brothers. All this instrumentation, it's been here forever. These suits and all this stuff, it's all been here. I'm just the first to put it together in one thing and try to do it in the clean tech revolution. He said, I'm living in the now. Everyone else is living in the past, on a fossil fuel future, something that's hurting our environment, hurting our planet, and is not good. He says, I'm living in the now. Everybody else is in the industrial age, still running on fossil fuels, doing things business as usual. I want to show you a little video where he's speaking to Ban Ki-moon, who is the Secretary General in 2015 at the signing of the Paris Agreement, a conversation that he has from the cockpit of Solar Impulse to Ban Ki-moon as they're signing the Paris Agreement.
Hello, Solar Pulse. Hello, Captain Picard. Where are you now flying?
I speak to you from the cockpit of Solar Impulse in the middle of the Pacific, flying on solar power, only, no fuel. You know, Mr. Secretary General, what you are doing today in New York, signing the Paris Climate Agreement, is more than protecting the environment. It is the launch of the clean technology revolution. But there is so much resistance everywhere. So be pioneers, be adventurers, be explorers of the solutions of today. This is how we can make a better world. Don't let the resistance take over, because we have the solutions. And if an airplane can come, like Solar Impulse, can fly day and night without fuel, the world, of course, can be much cleaner.
I am inspired by your pioneering spirit, and while you are making history, we have also made the history today. More than 175 countries signed the climate change agreement. And thank you for your leadership and inspiration. And I thank you very much. All the best to you. Bon voyage.
So this is a pinnacle moment in history. I want to tell you how pivotal this moment is. This is the first ever global moonshot. It's the first time 195 countries came together for the first time ever, agreed on the Paris Agreement and on the Sustainable Development Goals, and said, we would like to keep our planet at 1.5 degrees of warming. I don't know how many of you understand that moment or understand politicians, delegates, or countries. It's hard enough for two countries to decide what they're going to eat for lunch and where they're going to go for lunch, let alone on 195 decide on a roadmap, a plan, actions, targets, and indicators to get humanity on the right side of history to keep us at 1.5 degrees of warming. It is the world's first historical precedence. Never in human history have 195 countries agreed upon anything. They have a hard enough time finding their ability to communicate with each other and come to an agreement. We did it. It's a moment in human history, and I hope you understand how pivotal it is, because it means a lot on where we're going in the future. The Sustainable Development Goals were presented to us like this, very linear, from 1 to 17, laid out like this, very siloed. And when I tell people, do you know what the Sustainable Development Goals are, or talk to them about it, a lot of people don't know. Those who do know, they say, oh yeah, I like number 1, it's red, it's my favorite color, that's the one I'm working on, no poverty. And I say, great, it's so fabulous that you know about the goals and that you're working on number 1, but did you know that they're tied together as a system? It is virtually impossible to work on one SDG and not touch on all the other ones. Let's take that example of working on number 1, red, no poverty. You would automatically touch on number 2, zero hunger. Number 3, good health and well-being. Number 4, quality education, because people need to know and understand about that. Life on land, life below water, clean water and sanitation, and climate action, and many others, because they're all tied together as a system. In 2018, the world switched to thinking in silos or thinking linear to solve humanity's problems or our global grand challenges. We switched to a systemic approach to solving our global grand challenges. And for the United Nations, I wrote the Sustainable Development Goal Manifesto. The reason I wrote that is to give us a vision what it would feel like in December 2030 to reach all the Sustainable Development Goals. What would it feel like? What would the world look like if we achieve that? What does it mean for me? And I'm going to read it to you. I want you to maybe close your eyes or think along what it would feel like for you, December 2030, to stand in a world and live in a world that achieved all the Sustainable Development Goals. Imagine a world where there is no poverty and zero hunger. We have good health and well-being, quality education, and full gender equality everywhere. There is clean water and sanitation for everyone. Affordable and clean energy has created decent work and sustainable economic growth. And that has reduced, our prosperity is fueled by investments in resilient industry, innovations, and infrastructure, and that has reduced inequalities. We live in sustainable cities and communities, and responsible consumption and production has healed our planet. Climate action has stopped and reversed the warming of our planet, and we have flourishing life below water and abundant, diverse life on land. We enjoy peace and justice through strong institutions and have built long-term partnerships for the goals. I don't know about you, but I hope you can put yourself in that manifesto and say, yeah, that's a good world. That's the world I want to live in. And that's why I wrote this for the United Nations. And it's translated in numerous languages, and I've gotten a lot of resonance that people want to live in that future. This is truly how we need to view the Sustainable Development Goals, as a cake, a pie, a wedding chart cake, so to say. The bottom layer is the absolute most important layer. It's our biosphere. That is where we get every resource on our planet to produce computers, cell phones, to produce food. That's where we get all our resources from. And if that is no longer here, guess what? We can't do anything. We can't help society. We can't help our economy. We can't drive anything. So if we're in a world that has used all our resources and we don't have any more biodiversity, we're stuffed. Can you turn on the volume, please? I want you to watch this video. It's real important.
Around the world, people are waking up. They know we need change, and not just at the edges. We need to change our systems, not just our straws. But the question remains, how does change happen? In the face of these mounting crises, it can feel hopeless, but it shouldn't. Because there is a blueprint for change, buried deep in nature. It's a story of transformation, encoded at the deepest level of being, the imaginal cell. A cell that contains within it a vision of something new, of something better. The caterpillar, while alive, consumes. But this cannot go on forever. Everything has an end. Everything has a tipping point. All that is left is decay. But from this place of darkness, something new can be born. At first, the caterpillar fights this new presence,
What we want is more learning in schools and less activism.
seeing it as a threat, clinging to its old form. But the imaginal cells persist in spite of this. They begin to emit a common frequency. They cluster, they form collectives, until eventually they reach a critical mass. They can no longer be opposed. In time, the old yields to the new, and something beautiful emerges. So know this, the future is not foreclosed. Alternative worlds are possible. A world where hope matters more than despair. A world where care matters more than profit. a world where solidarity matters more than self-interest. Change can happen, and change is coming. Are you in?
This is a beautiful quote. Treat others and the planet as you would wish to be treated. That's the golden rule. This was a video from Reboot the Future, thinking about and talking about this symbiosis, this chrysalis, this transformation. Did you know to reach the Sustainable Development Goals, there are 6 major transformations needed? Now, as humanity, we kind of get in this bad situation where we confuse change or projects with transformation. Transformations are something that get us into a new era, a new epoch, that change humanity for the better, hopefully, sometimes for the worst, as we find ourselves now in the Anthropocene. I want you to know that it's easy to change. You could go on a diet, you could grow a beard, but you can also reach back for that box of cookies or that ice cream or those gummy bears or the Kaiserschmarrn and break that diet, or you can also shave that beard off and change your looks and cut your hair short or let it grow long. That's change. That's a project. A project starts and it ends, but it's not a transformation. And it's not a transition into a new epoch. There is a metamorphosis going on in tourism. It's the one of regenerative tourism. And so just like the caterpillar, we're going through this process. But if any of you know, there's no way in hell that a butterfly can go back into the chrysalis. Once that transformative door has been opened, it's open. You can never go back. You can't put the butterfly back in the chrysalis. It's made that transformation, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. And that's what we need to do with the Sustainable Development Goals. There's 6 transformations needed to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. They are all tied to the Sustainable Development Goals. Most of us only know about number 6, and that is, number 6 is the digital transformation. That's what we talk about quite a bit. But there is a lot more, 5 other transformations that we really need to work on to get us into that future we want. So now there is matter of fact, there's 3 United Nations tourism and travel and airline agencies, interagencies of the United Nations that deal nothing but on tourism and flight and what does the future of that look like. But what most people don't know is there's a dollar amount needed to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And so that you don't think I'm making up that number, it's 90 trillion US dollars. Trillion, not billion, not millions, trillion. That's if we had started in 2015. And this is directly from the UN website. That is roughly 6 trillion US dollars a year had we had started in 2015. And just so you believe me, here's the United Nations, 6 trillion annually to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's a big number. It's unfathomable for most people. But the reason I tell you that is I want to put it into perspective. It doesn't have to be big and scary, doom and gloom. It is very achievable. And let me tell you why. Because if we just do like we're going to do or how we think we are, or like when I fly into Vienna and see the big industrial age that we're in, business as usual, it will cost us 89 trillion US dollars regardless by December 2030. That's how much money we will spend regardless, because of COVID, because of climate change, because of whatever, just to do business as usual in a high carbon scenario. When a building gets old, we just tear it down and build a new one in a high carbon scenario. Nothing sustainable, no development, no new technologies, no new fuels or renewable energy that we use to do it in a better way. But if we do it the sustainable development way, the low carbon scenario, it's only roughly $94 trillion more, which is only $15 trillion more, and we have a much more long-term, better outcome and achievement. It's a really cool thing. Most people can't understand that, but did you know in the wellness and tourism area, there's $436 billion available there in untapped wellness tourism. I haven't even talked about regenerative tourism. I haven't talked about ecotourism or experiential tourism. And I go to every climate conference, the COPs. I was at COP26 in Glasgow. And on the first week, on Thursday, Mark Carney and Rishi Sunak, in the middle of the plenary of the General Assembly, said, private organizations and corporations have committed $130 trillion to reach the Sustainable Development Goals and put it at the heart of climate finance. That's a big number. That's a lot more money than we need, and I believe we can achieve it. Then last year, July 12th, the EU taxonomy, ESG taxonomy came out requiring those who make investments to have environmental, social governance standards. And I consult a lot of banks, a lot of people at the World Economic Forum, and there's also 6 transformations needed to do ESG sustainable investing. But I've had banks come to me and said, we have to turn clients away. We have to say, we can no longer do business with you because you don't have good ESG standards. You haven't implemented the Sustainable Development Goals into your business model. And what that truly means is the SDGs are an entirely new economic model, an entirely new system for our world. And they're tied, and SDGs pave the road for ESG. They set up the narrative for that. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but I'm pretty good at math, but I want to tell you something that most mathematicians would disagree on. But it's a fact that when you talk about environment, biological systems, or life systems, 1 + 1 never, and I would maybe just to be nice say rarely, equals 2. It's usually an exponential number. So what I'm saying to you at the core, if you change your model of your organization, your business, your life, how you work that life, and do it one that's regenerative and works in harmony with our earth and biology and environment, you can get exponential results in a positive way. Exponential function doesn't need to work always negative, where climate change is killing us and we're dying and all this doom and gloom dystopia. It can work on a positive way to fix things and reel that in. And that's really about this model of regeneration. How do we regenerate our supply chain? How do we regenerate our earth? And this is Paul Hawken. He wrote some fabulous books about how to draw down our climate change and global warming, but also on regeneration, some models for life. And a lot of people think regeneration is a new thing. They think it's trendy. When they ask me to speak about it, they think I'm going to talk about agriculture, regenerative agriculture or farming, because I come from a farming background. But it's an entirely new economic model. It's an entirely new lifestyle model. It's an entirely new model for the world in health, in travel, in many things. But I want you to know that 568 or plus years ago, Leonardo da Vinci, one of our first scientists and Renaissance man, spoke about this very much. It's not anything new. We just need to apply it into new models for our organizations and our life. And that's a regenerative platform, systems dynamic models or business models, organization models. Transformative roles in tourism, adopting living systems thinking for regenerative futures. Tourism is talking about regeneration. 4 global tourism scenarios. post-COVID, the one that looks the most is talking about regenerative tourism. How do we restore and have a model? There are models. What does regeneration look like? Is it extractive? Is it the sustainable model? Or is it regenerative? There are tools, models out there that teach and guide. The problem is, and that's why I brought it up in the beginning, most people here, most people I speak to, they're not even talking about the SDGs. So how in the heck are we going to get them to talk about regeneration if we can't even think about how we're going to progress our way forward? I'm going to wrap this up, and I could show you many other books and things that come out. You've probably heard there are tons of economic models out there. The ones that you might have heard of as circular economy, shared economy, platform economy, regenerative economy. You obviously know about capitalism and extractive and hedonistic models, but there's a lot of good models. So which one do we use? This ecological footprint of ecotourism packages is something that's emerging on the Earth Overshoot. And there's actual websites where you can go. How do you set up the model? How do you calculate your carbon footprint? And then there's tendencies that you can see the path of what does it mean when you do certain things to move forward. And here I even found something where it's regenerative tourism with the SDGs on there. It comes from the UN website. So I want you to know, I wish I had more time, and it's been fast and furious, like version 10 that's coming out soon of the movie, but there is so much to learn on this transition towards the future. Not only do we need to grasp the Sustainable Development Goals and work towards achieving the Paris Agreement, we also need to work towards the next step, which is resilience. How do we build resilience into our system? How do we rewild, replenish, and restore our world in the practices of doing business? In the business world, not in the tourism world, we're seeing this major trend that there is planetary services being offered, like Buoyant Slate in the Ocean Cleanup Project, or Climeworks, who's capturing carbon out, offering planetary services to leave the world better than we found it. And there's all sorts of places out there and resources for you to go and look what these principles are, how to learn about it, how to apply it into design, into your organizations, into your hotels, into your resorts, to move towards this ecological society and totally reframe the future of our world. So I've definitely gone over, and I have thousands of slides left, but there's other speakers waiting even though we started late, and I just want to skip to the end on the journey where we need to go as humanity, because I prepared many things for you around regeneration and leadership and how to get there and what that pathway is that can seem complex and hard. But this is the ETH in Zurich and in Switzerland that is offering new courses about designing resilient generative systems, economies, how to get there. But after the Sustainable Development Goals in 2019 already began the next steps, which is Resilience Frontiers. It's the next iteration after the Sustainable Development Goals in December 2030. Did you know that that existed already? And that goes to 2050, and then after 2050, we go into the next step, which is regeneration. Humanity needs to take this shift from this ego view where man is at the top to an eco view where man and woman are in center of all the species. But we have another journey, which is seva. It's an old Sanskrit word, which means regeneration, selfless service to life. And it's a journey that we're on to go to that symbiocene. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marc Buckley.